Welcome back to Hoop Slams. We're the show that hits below the belt like Manu Ginobili. My name is Marc Griffin, aka Montreal Mark. I'm joined by Justin Rowan, Cavs Canada. I'm horrible with that name, and Phil Boileau, Sporting Phil. We're going to talk a bevy of basketball today, and we're going to start with LeBron James, who, with Kevin Love on rest, Spursian rest, has kind of shifted to the 4-point forward position. Justin, you're a Cavs fanatic. What do you think about this kind of Draymond Green-esque role for him?
I think it's the ideal role for him, and this is typically the time of year that we see him transition into more and more post-play. One of the unique things of having Kevin Love on the team is that LeBron can play a lot of power forward offensively, with Love switching onto the perimeter. Now, the interesting wrinkle is Tyronn Lue has indicated that they're going to go to a lot more sets with Kevin Love playing as the center. LeBron at power forward, and Iman Shumpert taking the small forward role. That small forward role was originally intended for Joe Johnson, but he ended up signing with the Heat. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works. Obviously, Love doesn't have to deal with as much quickness at the center position, but how he holds up defensively is going to be the major test of that. Maybe they give up less penetration with Iman Shumpert now defending on the perimeter rather than James, who's been a bit of a turnstile on there. But it'll be the true test to see if that lineup can hold up defensively, because offensively it shouldn't have any problems generating tons of points.
Phil, you like it?
You know what? I like it in terms of, I think, to Justin's point, Kevin Love at the 5. I think he's a strong-bodied guy, rebounds well. I see that. I just kind of wish they could put Tristan Thompson's shot blocking into LeBron James to kind of make the perfect storm. I mean, I've often said, playing GM, I'd love to see, if they had to trade Kevin Durant for Love, just to see Love next to Ibaka, because I think that shot blocking next to Kevin Love would make a lot of sense. I mean, it's hard to argue against LeBron James, obviously. I think it's going to be a good lineup, but I think tactically Tristan Thompson is going to show up in a lot of key situations. I don't think it's necessarily your end game lineup, and I don't necessarily think it's a guarantee that this is what you deem your best. I think it's probably your best offensive lineup, oddly. And what's really cool about this is his rebounding numbers and stats should jump a bit from this, being able to play center, and he won't have to play as much away from the basket. He will be able to, but what they'll be able to do in that offensive set is have literally the option of having everyone spread out, right? So you can let LeBron James cut in, get a lot more drives with everyone being pulled away. So that's something very dangerous on the offensive side. But at the same point, he's getting the ball in more outlet passes from the center position, obvious defensive rebounds, and letting guys like Shumpert, JR, Kyrie, and LeBron just bolt down the court. I think we're going to see a much faster paced offense. The defense, without a legit shot blocker, we'll see how LeBron truly transcends that way. I mean, he's got the athleticism and some size to do it, but I think Tristan's still going to play an integral role.
Justin, offensively, another adjustment by Tyronn Lue has been having LeBron and Kyrie doing some more pick and roll. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I was actually just about to bring it up. The other thing of LeBron's transitioning to that power forward role is they're finally giving Kyrie Irving an opportunity to function as a playmaker. We've seen it in the past. We saw it with Team USA, where he kind of picked his spots of when he would score. And over February, it's actually kind of funny to see Kyrie get criticism as a playmaker when he's playing off ball, and he was only getting 1 assist fewer per game than LeBron in February. We saw it against Washington now, running the pick and roll with LeBron. I believe he had 21 points and 8 assists. You're seeing him pick his spots, functioning confidently within the offense, and that's going to be the other major key with this change. Is 1, the defense, which we covered, but 2, how Kyrie grows as a playmaker. Because he's 23 years old, and last year he didn't really have the opportunity to play as a playmaker, so seeing what he can do, where he needs to grow, is going to be really telling down the stretch here.
So, Phil, LeBron's on the wrong side of 30 now. As he continues to age, what is his template? What player is his template for being, I guess, a point forward in the league?
I know it sounds weird, but I like more athletic Boris Dia. I like obviously he's a much better player, but one thing we were saying with Kyrie Irving getting more touches that way, we we're also going to see a 4 and a 5 in Love and LeBron that's able to pass with the best big men in the league at this point.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're able to see what a great passing big man in Andrew Bogut can do for Golden State. Imagine having two front court players who demand so much attention, and you also have all these capable scorers. I mean, inside out. I don't even necessarily think that it means that Kyrie's assist numbers go up. I think they could, but I think there's going to be a lot more feed the post, come back out to guys who are really open. I just think we're going to see a better flow to that offense overall. But when we see him transitioning past 30, to your point, I think the power forward position makes sense. I think in an NBA where players are getting smaller, he's still going to have. I mean, look, he's got a Karl Malone body he has for years, and who was very successful at power forward. I mean, he's the kind of guy who'll be successful at almost any position. But to Justin's point before, about being the turnstile on the wing, maybe allowing him to get inside a little bit more, maybe not have to cover quite the spacing, will benefit him, and we'll see kind of a resurgence. I mean, for a power forward, I mean, I think he can be a defensive monster with his quick hands and quick feet.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, last
Yeah,
question.
I mean, really. Oh, yeah.
I just got to throw this one last question to you. Do you think you'll ever feel like a robot, Draymond Green style, in that role?
Well, yeah, I feel like I was actually just going to bring that up. When you say more athletic Boris Diaw, that's Draymond Green. Boris Diaw is the only comp I can think of Draymond Green in the past, at least when he was in Phoenix and was slimmer. But yeah, I think that's the ideal role for LeBron, especially with his jump shot kind of leaving him. Because if he's the one initiating the offense without a jump shot, that makes your pick and roll less potent, because if he's bringing the ball up and he's using that screen, you can just go under because you know he's not a three-point threat anymore. So that limits the effectiveness of effective role players in general, like Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson, that can really do damage as the role guy. So I think that is the ideal role for him as he transitions throughout his career.
So it's LeBron James, point forward. So we're a bizarre story from Oklahoma City. Co-owner of the OKC Thunder, Aubrey McClendon, was indicted into a major financial, I guess, swindling deal over the last few years. Him and Tom Ward, both co-owners of OKC, were indicted this week, and then a day afterwards, McClendon drove his car full speed into a wall, apparently suicide. His body was charred completely. But I want to bring this story back to the documentary Sonicsgate. If you haven't seen it, it's out there on YouTube. It's about the history of the Sonics organization and the Oklahoma City businessmen who brought the team to OKC about 10 years ago. McClendon was the number 2 guy in this situation. Tom Ward was there as well, and the number 1 was Clay Bennett. Aubrey and him were high school friends, been friends for a long time. So I want to focus mostly on Aubrey's, I guess, role in this whole affair, because the 2 hours barely covers the entire financial up and downs that took place over those years. So McClendon was quoted basically while this purchase was going on. Basically, these businessmen bought this team and said they were going to keep the team in Seattle. And then McClendon went to an Oklahoma City newspaper, I think it was in 2006 or 2007, and said, our intentions all along were to bring the team to Oklahoma City. David Stern got wind of that and fined him a historic $250,000. Justin, I'll let you take it from there. I mean, how did this feel to you when this went down?
I mean, it's obviously shocking. It's disappointing. You feel for his family. Obviously, the circumstances, whether or not it was a suicide, it does appear that way. That's still somebody's father. That's still somebody's husband. So that human aspect of it, it's always very troubling. It's in regards to the kind of Sonicsgate aspect of it. I think it's just proof that when it comes to owners, there's a lot of things kind of shady that they do behind the scenes. Some they do in the light that help them get into the position that they're in. And it's something sports fans don't like to focus on often, but typically those guys aren't always making their money in the most honest of ways. But when a tragedy like this happens, even if it was intentional on his behalf, all that stuff kind of falls to the side when you consider the human impact of it.
Phil, I mean, you're a what-if guy, and I know you've seen Sonicsgate yourself, and at the end there was a what-if posited. Basically, the city of Seattle and Washington State as a whole were basically in this legal proceeding with the businessmen from Oklahoma. They were coming to heads, and there was going to be a judge making a ruling. And basically, a few hours, I think it was 4 hours before the judge was about to make the ruling, they made a settlement. And basically, the Seattle community was paid off, and the team was moved to Oklahoma City. And so the what if in the situation was, what if they had won, or what if they had lost and they had appealed? It basically meant the team would have had to stay in Seattle for another year, which would have led into the financial crisis of 2008. And what's really important there is that McClendon basically lost 90% of everything he owned in the financial crisis that year, apparently up to $2 billion. And there's this theory that's been floating around that if they had stayed that one last year, the team would probably still be in Seattle today. What do you think about that?
Well, after watching it, I mean, I had many, many emotions. I remember just, being a Sonics fan and seeing them get Kevin Durant. I've always been a Kemp fan and everything. And I remember being very, very angry about the whole thing. And when I first heard of Aubrey's death, I remember a quote came into my mind. I was like, it seemed a little bit ironic how his life ended the same way that his group's attempt to keep the Sonics in Seattle did, deception and suicide. But in terms of keeping them around, I think, look, Seattle was very clear they didn't want any publicly funded stadiums. I think there is a larger play at hand here. Should cities have to fund this, or is the NBA just going for a cash grab? I mean, look, would he need the money? And yes, of course. And part of the ownership group on the other side actually was now Clippers owner Steve Ballmer. So obviously deep pockets there with Microsoft, who I think would have jumped at that chance. And I think if he would have done that, because the writing was on the table. We saw the leaked emails. We saw everything else. This group wanted to bring them in. I'm very happy for Oklahoma. They have fantastic fans, tremendous success story there. But it does burn. I mean, because you have all the same. And it was a set of unfortunate circumstances, but I think they would have stayed, assuming the OKC group would have sold. And I don't necessarily know they would have, considering their goal was to go back. I think if you assume that because of the crash they're forced to sell and it becomes a poor investment, then yes, I think almost anyone else would have kept them there. And I think that there would have been a bevy of people trying to do it. But I don't know. I'm a big what-if person. You're right. But I think these guys who bought it, it was more than business for them. I think, they're both the whole group was big into bringing basketball to Oklahoma City. And I think when you're an owner, you're willing to take a loss financially sometimes. And to be the hero for Oklahoma, I think they would have stomached that for a year. So I don't know.
Justin, bringing it back to Seattle, I mean, 41 years of NBA history. They won a title, I think it was 78. All these guys who went through there through the years, Hall of Famers, even Bill Russell coached there back in the day. How long do you think it'll be before they get a team again?
I think within the next 10 to 15 years, we'll see teams both in Seattle and Vancouver. I think those are the two markets the league really regrets getting out of to some extent. Obviously, Oklahoma City has been a success. But I think expansion's somewhat inevitable in the NBA. I think expansion not only in Canada, but globally is something that they are looking at and something we'll see in the next 10 to 15 years. But you can't really expand to other markets until you reward and bring back that Seattle franchise. Came really close a couple of years ago. The Kings almost got relocated there. I think the perfect set of circumstances will come up eventually within the next 10 to 15 years.
All right, so we're going to jump ahead to the next topic, and basically we're hitting to the tail end of the NBA season, and this is basically the deadline for guys from around the globe to sign last-minute buyouts, guys playing in foreign leagues to come back to the NBA. Phil, I'll throw this to you first. What's the most intriguing kind of last-minute signing you've seen this season?
Last-minute signing. I mean, I've always been a Michael Beasley fan. I'm a big fan of him, but I'm not a fan of Houston and how that's working out. I don't think he necessarily adds too much there, but I actually think in a weird way, Indiana with Ty Lawson, to me, they're a fairly young team. They have an established point guard already, but they have a point guard, George Hill, who can play some off-ball, play the two. Monta Ellis is a smaller two guard, but I think with Lawson, it's all everyone knows if he got everything running again, the numbers he put up in Denver. Now, if he get his personal life straight, who knows? But for them, I see it as they don't need him to start, but if he ever can turn it around and realize maybe a smaller town Indiana, maybe that basketball culture, maybe playing under Larry Bird like he did for Lance Stevenson, maybe some of that can right the ship. And if he does that, I really like that three-man rotation. And pairing that with Miles Turner, I think that I don't know if obviously doesn't make him a contender, but I think it jumps them up another level where they become kind of sneaky good.
Justin, what stands out to you?
Within a lot of what Phil said, I think Indy does have a lot of those great core pieces. Honestly, Phil, I got to give you a lot of credit when it comes to Miles Turner. I didn't think he'd be as pro-ready as he has been, but his footwork, his polish, it's really, really impressive to me. I've just been blown away by Turner and what he's done this season.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic guy, and I think he meets the modern NBA need for a big man wholeheartedly. and I'm sure on a lesser level, Paul George is happy he doesn't have to play power forward anymore.
What about the Spurs? Sure. Spurs have levied out their bench, picking up Barton and Miller. Do you think that was the right move for these guys?
I love it. I absolutely love the move for Kevin Martin. Gives him another shooter. He's not a strong defender by any stretch of the imagination, but he does try there. And the Spurs have successfully hid poor defenders in the past. They've done a good job this year with LaMarcus Aldridge, who is probably closer to about break-even overall defensively, but they've hid what he doesn't do well, very well. And I think the Spurs getting another shooter, another wing, someone that can generate offense, which they were lacking, especially if Tony Parker does slow down a little bit as the season goes on. Kevin Martin's someone that can initiate the offense and create penetration. So I really, really do love the Kevin Martin pickup. I think that's one of the more impactful deadline pickups.
Andre Miller?
I'm not sure, because I think Patty Mills and if Manu comes back, his ball handling along with Tony Parker. I think Andre Miller is more of a sentimental piece. I think he'll play sparingly, but I think I'd have to agree more with Justin with Kevin Martin. I think it never hurts to add someone who's a knockdown three-point shooter to a team that wants to aspire, especially who has two post guys like Aldridge and Duncan. I just think it can't do anything but help. But at the same time, I think it's a perfect situation for Kevin Martin. I think him putting himself in a situation where he had to be more than what he's capable of right now, play more minutes than he should be. I mean, I think there's a lot of places he could have gone, but I think this is the perfect system. I think he'll get you maybe 10, 15 minutes a game and just really be able to be fresh all the time. And I think Kevin Martin, I believe, is 32 right now. So I think at that point, it's kind of the ideal transition. I mean, we're talking about LeBron getting older and finding better ways to maximize his talents. I think this is a great way. And I think Kevin Martin can, we've seen he'll put up 20 points here or there. Like, he's one of those guys that it gives the Spurs another guy who, because of their ball their ball movement, and like a different guy's their hero every day. He gives them another legit guy that he could come up in a playoff game and give you 20, 23, and you wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, I'd be shocked if he did it every game, but little games here and there where he's just a top 2 scorer on your team wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, you could argue that they probably have the deepest team in the league right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the oldest by far.
Yeah. Now Tim Duncan's no longer the oldest Spur, which is...
It seems oddly fitting to have the professor in a Spurs jersey, though. Like, that just needed to happen before he retired.
Yeah. And no one's brought up Nazir Mohammed.
Because why would you?
Back to OKC. So full circle, back to OKC. Well, look, he's been there before. He's done that before. And when we're talking about a 6'10" big who's not a great defender in my eyes, I mean, between McGarry, and Collison, and it's not like they're missing Cantor. Like there's different levels of skill, but I don't think he'll play that much, to be honest. I just think he's an extra big body.
Yeah, it's just he's a tall guy with a pulse, and he's an insurance piece. He's not much more than that at this point of his career.
Okay, switching ahead to our last topic. In our ongoing saga of guys nearing retirement of this golden era of basketball, this generation with Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan at the head, today I want to talk about a guy who's not officially retired yet, kind of lurking in the wings, not really spoken about. Ray Allen, one of the greatest shooters of all time. Phil, I'll go to you first. Where do you think, we talk about Steph as maybe being the greatest shooter. Where do you think Ray stands in there?
See, it's tough, right? Because I think while Steph is, it's tough to argue against him being the greatest shooter. Part of what he brings is the ability to shot create. I think when you're talking about a catch-and-shoot shooter, Ray Allen's definitely got to be out. When we're talking about Ray Allen, I think we're talking about more than just a three-point shooter. I think that's unfair, and I think that's something that maybe has it's been a weird label. He's been a fantastic athlete in one of the, he keeps himself in the best shape of almost anyone in the league. If Eddie Curry could have just learned how to eat like Ray Allen, maybe we'd have a different career going on there. But, when we see his early days, with UConn and Milwaukee, everyone forgets he was part of that Glenn Robinson, Sam Cassell, Ray Allen trio that could score with the best of them. He was incredibly athletic, would throw down brutal dunks.
He was in the dunk contest.
Yeah, he was in the dunk contest, and he was traded for Gary Payton. Tying again to Seattle. And that's no small thing. It was tough for them to give up Gary, even considering everything. But getting someone like that back, what sucks to me is people always see him as kind of like this, complimentary piece. He was there next to someone else to make them better. He was the guy in Miami who hit the shot. He was this. But, I think he's one of the most underrated guys who've played in the league in a while. A bit better ball handler and rebounder than I think we gave him credit for. Amazing teammate, consummate professional, and movie star. So what more do you want?
Yeah, I think he really ties in well with Paul Pierce, not just because of the Celtics connection, but a lot of people don't remember those days prior to them joining up in Boston. Pierce was already there, but he was a tremendous athlete, could put the ball on the floor, could create his own shot, but he changed his career. He changed his game to suit himself as he aged. He took great care of his body. Just incredible longevity and such an effective player for such a long time. And the thing people forget is how good he was defensively. I remember in the finals against Kobe Bryant, he was the one locking him down in those closing moments and was an instrumental piece for the Celtics' success. His defense was just as important as his shooting. And I think two moments stick out for me with Ray Allen. One, of course, the shot when he was with the Heat, but round one against the Chicago Bulls, him and Ben Gordon going at it, hitting three after three after three. That was one of the most incredible first-round series I've ever seen. probably only now eclipsed by Clippers Spurs last season. But that was one hell of a series, and Ray Allen was a superstar in that series. And I think not enough people recall the days when he was that on his own.
Yeah, and I think just to mention, going back to the Sonics, I think it was 2005. He led that team out of nowhere, out of obscurity, and he missed a corner in the second round of the playoffs. He missed a corner baseline shot in and out that would have brought them to the third round of the playoffs. So it's just kind of been lost in history how much he did before he got to Boston. Even with Milwaukee, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals during 2001. When they faced the Sixers. This was after Vince Carter missed the baseline shot himself. So he has a lot going. He had a lot going on for himself before he even got to the Celtics. Phil, talking about Game 6 against Miami, it's one of those rare basketball plays or sports plays in general where you remember where you were when you saw it. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was actually in my apartment in living in Montreal, and I literally forgot to make plans that day to see. I had just kind of stuffed myself in my living room watching it. I don't even think I was. Yeah, it was just one of those moments where I don't know. I was having trouble cheering for Miami, so I feel like that whole playoff run was me rooting against Miami, and then just seeing that, I was just like, oh, I wanted Duncan to get that. For nothing else, then I wanted Duncan to have that extra ring over Kobe. And I know that sounds so weird, and we're talking about Ray Allen guarding Kobe, but I feel that, as awesome as that shot was, I still feel that year was still the one that Spurs let go away, get away.
Justin, where were you for that shot?
I was watching it with my brother. We were downstairs, parents' basement. It was fairly late at night at that point, and I remember my brother was just a wreck because he was rooting hard for Miami during that time. He's always been a big Chris Bosh fan, and he was a wreck prior to that whole sequence that led to that. So he was freaking out, just complete despair leading up to it, and then he just screamed and woke up the whole house. He just lost his mind at that Ray Allen 3, and that always stands out to me. I'll always remember that. It was just incredible shot, an incredible run, and really the offensive rebound that Chris Bosh got there was massive, and the awareness to kick it out to Allen in the corner, who just got his feet behind the line just in time to release that with that signature phone booth shot. That's something that'll always stick in my mind.
I'd read in the years afterwards that Ray Allen had been doing this practice drill he created for years where he would basically lie down on the free throw line, face down, and then jump up and sprint to the corner and take a three. And so this was literally the embodiment of years and years of practicing for that kind of frenzied moment. And as for myself, I was in a cafe. It was just about to strike midnight, and we were a packed house watching this game. And it was raining and thunder and lightning. And the TV, right after it hit the shot, the TV went out. And we thought that there was a power outage, and we're hooting and hollering. And they're like, no, you got to go home. We're closing. Go home right now. And we started screaming at them. They kicked us out, and I ran home in the rain and caught the overtime. But it's just one of those moments, just like Steph Curry's shot last week, that you're always going to remember where you were. Phil, any last thoughts on Ray Allen?
Only that he's got game, and he always has, and people got to recognize. And you know what? We talk a lot about 3-and-D people in today's NBA. He was one of the best and has been for years. So, Ray Allen.
Justin, last shot?
Last with Ray Allen?
Yeah.
Geez. The last thing that sticks out in my mind, it's just the release. I don't think we're ever going to see someone necessarily with that release. Steph Curry has a more traditional in front of him shot, and that's straight up and down, both hands above his head. At the upper body strength that takes, I don't know if you've ever tried to mimic it, but it's exhausting. But the amount of work that he put in before every game, like you said, laying on the free throw line and sprinting to the corner, all the work he put in paid off with the game, the unique game that he was able to carve out for himself, and the way he was able to reinvent his game throughout his career. So that's always going to stand out to me.
Yeah, and the one last moment thing about Ray Allen I have to mention, it still stands out to me. Apparently the man never ate a hamburger. So
Wow.
God bless you.
Missing out. They're delicious.
Okay, Phil, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode here on the podcast, hoopslounge.com. You can join us for everything basketball. Cavs Canada for Justin, Montreal Marc for Mark, and Sporting Phil for myself. Join us in the Twitter world to talk basketball and everything in between. Please like and share our videos and podcasts, and remember to keep the conversation going in the comments section below. We're getting some pretty fun stuff going that way. We'd like to hear what you guys think, 'cause that inspires what we do. So from myself, Justin, keep in the lounge.